Dave Angeloni, and welcome to We All Have Shit, the only bi-weekly podcast that tries to take an honest look at what ails us and moves us forward into the lives we lead. Our show can be accessed through our YouTube channel, the We All Have Shit podcast. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the WAHS podcast channel to not miss an episode and ring that bell to get notifications. We'll conduct our show with comfort, realism, and sensitivity. And we will do our best to be brief, to the point, and real. Anything that might be difficult for us is on the table. We are all human, and we all have things in common. Moreover, we were created to exist in a social context and to help each other as best we can. This will not be a bitch fest, nor a complaint zone, nor a place for negativity. Rather, we will strive to maintain positivity and enthusiasm during the challenges we face, because life is here and life is now. Finally, while I may have been a trained and experienced professional counselor in a past life, this is not me now, and this is not our show. This will not be a glorified pop culture counseling session. Rather, we will simply do our best to shed some light on our troubles, talk about how we're dealing with them, and hopefully make some positive contributions to the world around us. Whew! Okay, we have a very special guest here today. She has agreed to come on, and welcome her wholeheartedly. My wife, Dina, is here. So, before I turn things over to Dina, I have to just say this. Of course, as a spouse, she has been nothing but supportive of me throughout this whole journey. And when I came to her with this crazy idea to do a podcast and have guests on occasionally, of course she was willing to do it. Of course I wanted her to be here, but understandably, she's a little reluctant, to talk about herself and things like that. Totally understand. So we're going to try to get through that, navigate through that here today the best we can, because she's going to add, I think, an important aspect to this whole thing. So anyone who's living with a chronic, condition or illness or what have you, that's challenging for the individual. However, if you're married or if you have a significant other, it's also challenging for them. So Dina is brave enough to join us here today. So Dina, welcome to We All Have Shit. And Dina, what is your shit?
Well, Dave, thank you for having me. What is my shit? Well, Dave, you are my shit.
Of course I am.
Yes, you are. You are my shit. Like Dave said, I'm definitely reluctant. I have a very big discomfort. I'm talking about myself. But I think this is important. I think I'm actually his first female guest, so happy about that. Yeah. But I'm, really think it's important to get a perspective of a spouse or a partner that is dealing with chronic illness. Yeah. So I have actually a shirt on today that I wore, and it says, his fight is my fight.
Yes.
And that's exactly it. So even though I'm not the one with the disease, I walk next to him by giving him as much strength as I could give, but it's hard and it's shit. It definitely is shit.
Brief interruption, and sorry for doing this, but the shirt Dina's wearing right now, they have, when I first got diagnosed, I was oddly happy to see there's awesome MS attire out there. We learned that the color of MS is orange, maybe the ugliest color in the world, doesn't go with anything, so that's the color of MS. So we have that, yes. So Dina's proudly wearing that today. Thank you, Dina.
His fight is my fight.
Yes,
so,
yes.
Okay, so I'm actually going to start talking about a little bit from Dave's first podcast. So when Dave came to me, now you have to understand, he comes to me with these ideas pretty much our whole life, and I try to be as supportive as I could. And I listened to the first podcast, and the first podcast, was great and stuff, but it was a very, very different story. My side, because what he said in his was the truth, but it was the truth of what he remembered and what he felt and what he saw.
The key word here is perspective,
yes,
right?
Perspective. Yes. So I'm going to kind of go back to the start of this and kind of give you my perspective on it of a spouse and kind of how I had to navigate it.
And I haven't really heard this in detail or one continual thing. I just get blotches here and there, as spouses do. So I'm curious. Yes, please.
So, I mean, one thing is I think I had to leave a lot of things inside, and I couldn't say things at certain times because of how Dave would react to it. And like as a spouse with MS or without any other illness, you know, he doesn't listen to me. So so we kind of have to navigate this from the beginning.
Whether it's MS or not.
Exactly.
Okay.
So I'm going back to May 21. So it was actually the St. Ubaldo before he came to me and said, I'm done. I got to do this. So it was almost a year. And he ran, and I usually am so nervous and follow him with the race. And he explained what this day is. I'm a West Scranton girl, so this was all new to me. Over 20 some years ago, actually. Over 25 years ago.
Prayers
that
for
I
Dina.
started that.
Just in that regard, prayers for Dina.
No, so our house is in the middle of it all. So I definitely embraced it, and I'm a true Jesupian, let's just say that. So, but I always bleed blue and white. Remember that. So, but I remember that St. Ubaldo, and it was Church Street. And he was running up Church Street, and I actually had my camera out, and he went down actually in front of me, and people just started piling on top of him, and I would be like, oh my god, like why I was videotaping, and he just oh, I just lost my footing. And then later on he lost his footing again, and I just remember that night when we're kind of unwinding from the day, and he had bruises and scrapes kind of all over his body, which he's never done before. And silently in my mind I'm thinking, okay, is this because he's getting older? And when will he stop running? And he used to say to me, and this is a shout out to my brother-in-law Paul, he's 3 years younger than his brother, and he's well, 3 years after my brother stops running, and my brother-in-law is still running strong.
That's always been my thing, right? 3 years after Paul stops, I'll stop. But
we're now getting our kids into it, and I just remember that was really the first time in my life inside of me saying, shit, is there something going on? So I also know that Dave's doctor and him, he was with his doctor a long time, and he would go to him and say, listen, doc, my biggest fear is having MS. My mother has it. I'm going to, my mother just died of it or whatever. And he's like, Dave, you're fine. You're healthy. I can't give you an MRI. You have no symptoms. You're fine. You don't have MS. And really that kind of lasted a few years, but it was always in his mind. And I knew this was his worst fear. So that was St. Ubaldo.
That's totally true.
Yeah. So then the summer came, and, every once in a while he'd fall up the steps, or he would say oh, I was walking around the courthouse at lunch, and he'd trip, and he's oh, but it's the sidewalk, it's this, and so I kind of was okay, but inside of me I'm okay, do I say something? And if I ever did say a little thing, he completely got mad and blew me off.
Of
so
course.
I kind of had to let that go,
because it was the biggest fear.
Yeah, of course. So then the September of that fall. So you did speak about when we were band. I was a band mom. We were band parents, and we worked the stadium in the concession stand.
Stands, yeah.
And I was in hot chocolate hell, as I always was. And Dave was at the window, and all my band mom friends were there, and Dave went down. And I know he said this in his first podcast, and I mean he went down, and it was a hard fall, and it
knocked the wind out of me.
Yeah.
I was convinced I broke a rib or two.
Yeah.
It was I went down.
So I
didn't break a
knew
rib.
this was a fall that was no other fall, and I remember my friends behind there pulled me aside because they knew it, and my friends behind there, a big shout out to my cherry crumbers, but they came up to me, and I think I shared with maybe Leanne or something, that just saying this is Dave's biggest fear, and I want to get him checked out. I feel he needs to get checked out, but this is his third time that he fell, and this is a really hard fall.
Yeah.
So that was kind of in my mind. Then he mentioned in his first podcast that he had a minor surgery, and that he had a bowel resection from diverticulitis.
Minor,
not so minor.
Scratch.
Yeah. So he was basically in the hospital for 5 days. So it was definitely not a minor surgery. And at that time, it was a week before he turned 50.
Yeah.
So kind of everything went on the weight side from the fall to this surgery. And then I noticed a big difference after the surgery. And of course, like when I would bring something up to him, Dave, you would be like, it's a surgery. I need to get, I'm going to get stronger. I'm going to get stronger. So, and he never did. And then I noticed that, like, let's fast forward then to that St. Ubaldo on May of 22, that he fell. I was taking a video once again of Dominic being under for the first time. And again, he was just running next to him and he went down. And then I find out it was his fourth time that he went down. And he just looked at me. And at that time, after a year of saying something to him, he looked at me and said, D, I'm done. And I can't do this anymore. And he's like, there's something wrong with me.
And that's the thing. And honestly, D, thank you for like rewinding the clock like that, honestly, and putting that other, perspective on that stuff, and it's valuable, But that's, I think, maybe a thing with MS at least, right? Talking about that, like, there's limitations that you're going to have, but I think you kind of have to find them yourself. Like, if you don't do something because, you might not be able to, it's like, well, then, but if you don't do something because you're unable to or you can't do it, well, then you learn that, right? So that was a hard lesson for me and for you, of course, right? To see that, like, I can't, I'm done.
Yeah.
I just can't.
Well, I also think that you can make a million excuses.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like somebody with chest pain, they could be like, oh, I had, dinner that, gives me heartburn. Or like you could always make excuses for everything. And you made every excuse under the bus.
Hey,
okay.
you mentioned the chest pain thing. I interrupted her. I'm sorry. So Dina worked with heart patients.
I'm used to it, but go ahead.
Worked with heart patients for a long 20-some years,
Yeah.
right? So you've heard from a heart perspective every excuse in the book.
Yes.
Yeah, so she has many,
So it could always
others.
it could definitely always be something else. But like, I know my husband, we're married, we're going to be married 28 years soon. Like, so I know him and I knew there was something wrong, but he had to make this decision. So he says to me, and then we got the ball rolling, like, I'm done. So like that next day, he just switched to a different doctor. Like his doctor retired, switched to a different doctor, and went for an MRI. And the MRI, I'll never forget it. It was up at Viewmont Medical. And you know how Toys R Us used to be next door, so it's like Ocean State. And it was kind of like COVID still. Like I couldn't come in with you.
Yeah.
So I went over there, and you were in your MRI on your brain. And I don't even
do what you want. I'll be fine. Today.
And I just remember like walking around like a zombie with my mind just like going crazy, thinking like, what could this be? What could it be? And so we got through that, and then we were packing for the beach, and Dave got a call from his doctor,
4:30 on a Friday.
Yeah, 4:30 on a Friday. We're leaving like 5 o'clock that next morning. Now, in the meantime, I wanted to tell our boys, who were not little, just that he was going through this, and he did not want to. He was like, absolutely not. I don't want anybody to know. And that was really hard because this was from St. Ubaldo. Now we're in like June. Like we're in like maybe almost a month.
Because I didn't know what it was either.
Well,
so
no,
like, what are you going to tell them?
I get it, but like I just wanted, because it was hard to keep it inside. I might have shared it with a dear friend at work, but I needed to like be like, it was really, really hard. So
and Dina's a person that when she's connected with people, a person, she needs to share stuff, which is typical for human beings, right? So this was massive in her life, and she needed somebody to talk to. But because of me, I'm like, no, what are you going to say?
No, you can't tell anybody. You can't say a word to anybody.
That was
and
my
stuff like that.
initial perspective.
Need to know basis. So, so that was kind of hard. So he gets the call. The doctor says, Dave, it's not MS and it's not a brain tumor, because there were the two things we asked about. But you know what? There's like maybe like a couple white spots on your brain. You need to follow up with a neurologist. Yeah. So I was like, okay, well, I'm thrilled it's not MS, because I know that's his worst fear. Thank God it's not a brain tumor. But what else could it be? So of course my mind starts like, does he have like onset of Alzheimer's? Is it dementia? Is it Parkinson's? Like I was like digging that hole pretty deep. And but we're like, we're going to the beach and everything will be okay. And then I was like, I think we should tell the boys. He was like, absolutely not. So
and
then
the doctor said, follow up on it
when you
after
get
your
home.
vacation.
Yeah,
go on
when you get
vacation,
home.
have a good time, this and that. But.
So then he, so we're driving at like 4 in the morning, 5 in the morning, and all of a sudden he decides he's going to tell the boys about it. And I'm like, okay. Like, so this is Dave. Like, he's just like, when he gets something like, no, and then all of a sudden he does it. So I was like, I guess we're telling. He's like, but we're not telling Grammy and Grandpa because we're going to be on vacation with my parents. And like, we're not telling anybody. Then in the middle of the week, you passed out. And
Towel
you passed
rack.
out, pulled off a towel rack, got me up in the middle of the night. I start doing his pulse and, doing everything like that, getting him drinks and like making sure he's hydrated. So obviously there was no hiding it anymore because there was no towel rack on our bathroom of this house that we're renting.
A few hours, it's like a brand new house
Yeah.
kind of, and we, a few hours later, I guess, like before the sun came up or whatever, my in-laws, went to the bathroom or whatever, and they're like, what the heck what happened here? So I had to tell them, right?
Yeah.
So we're like, okay.
So we told them, and we were like, you know what? Nobody knows it, but, thank God it's not MS and it's not a brain tumor. So that's what we were going with. So fast forward, the same thing that Dave said in his first episode, the doctor, and I really wish whoever this nurse was, and we never got her name, I would have baked for her. And but she kept on saying 6 months. Then she said 3 months. And then finally, when Dave's like, no, like I need something as soon as possible. And she said, Penn or Hershey. And he calls me at work. I'm like, first available, like, let's see. And I always say my mother-in-law pushed a lot of strings up in heaven, and somebody just happened to cancel the next day at Penn. And thank God I have a boss, and we work at the university that is so wonderful, like, and accommodating that they were like, go. It was the next day, and we were off to Penn.
Yeah, it was like 4:00 one day, and like, you have to be here 9 a.m. tomorrow.
Yep.
We're like, okay,
we'll be there. So it was actually a neurologist. It was nothing with MS. It was just a neurologist that we saw. And that's when Dave gets a little foggy because I was the one that kind of had to push everything down and really like step up to be like, okay, what's happening here?
So purposeful interruption here. Yeah. So anyone that's been diagnosed with a chronic kind of thing, I don't know how you would handle it if you didn't have a second set of ears with you, whether it's a loved one, a parent, a sibling, friend, whatever. You gotta have a second set of ears because when I still remember seeing those images on the MRI, my brain and the spots all over, I'm like, jeez. Like,
when you say like you
blink
can't
out.
unsee something,
Oh.
that
it was like from that point on, I was haze.
Yeah.
Nothing, just haze. So,
well, he
go
also,
ahead.
so the neurologist was having him do these tests, and he was failing miserably. Like he couldn't remember some things, and then like walking, and she had him walk in the straight line, and like
mental and physical.
Yeah, it was like mental and physical things. I'm like, what is happening? Like, oh my God, like he's so much worse right now. Like, what is happening?
And I'm a trivia guy, so
yes,
usually I'm not.
So she's like, remember these words: banana, phone. Like it was like, yeah. So it was like not
great. It was a
great.
series of 4 or 5 words
Yeah.
in a row. I only remember like 1 or 2.
So then he had him walk. She had him walking, and then we looked at his MRI. And like I said, like you can't unsee the images of somebody's brain, somebody you love more than anyone in the world, and having just spots and spots. And I said, it's, the doctor said it was a few spots, and she's like, a few spots, and there was nothing on. Like we didn't get his spine yet. We only got his brain. And then I was like, okay. And at that time, I still was convinced of what the doctor said here in Scranton, that it's not MS and it's not a brain tumor. So I said, okay, so like, since it's not MS and not a brain tumor, like, and she just stopped and looked at me and said, who told you this wasn't MS? And I think I just looked at her, looked at Dave, and we were kind of like, well, the doctor, whoever the radiologist who read the report. So she's like, well, I'm a neurologist and I can't make that diagnosis for you, but you need to get immediately blood work. You need to have a lumbar and spinal MRI. You need to have a spinal tap, and you need to go to an MR specialist immediately. And at that point,
An MS specialist.
an MS specialist. What did I say?
MR.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
MS,
I
yeah.
think. I don't know.
Okay.
But yeah, so MS, here's one of the developments of disease awareness, right? So previously, years and years ago, the diagnosis of MS might have been more casually given, but today doctors are not reluctant, but they have to rule a bunch of things out first, right? So we spent that summer.
And we didn't know that because a
doing
lot of
authentic
times
things,
MS, I mean, people could think you have like bit by a tick, or if you have like just different things could kind of mimic out those.
Lupus
Yeah,
or
like
whatever,
you can mimic it. So at that time, Dave, like we walked out to the front and Dave was out. Like he's heard nothing else except for one line that Dr. What was her name? Liberace. And she's
retired now.
Yeah, she's retired. And she looked at you and said, "I wish I had better news for you." And then that's what knocks the wind out of you. That word of being a spouse, standing next to him and hearing that. And I was in like, let's go.
Yeah.
Like that to me is, he wasn't in any way, shape, or form to be like, okay, let's do this. So I had to do that for him. And it was like, let's go. I got my phone out. We got our book out. Let's book this. Let's book that. And like, it was just like
the appointments.
nonstop.
So all the skills Dina had and mastered over however many years of being a parent, right, all came to the forefront at that moment with organization, communication, writing things down, planning things, making appointments, all that stuff. So thank God.
So we got all that, and then we were kind of silent in the car with each other, and we were going to go to Chili's. I remember we don't have a Chili's. We have one now, but and Marino gave us a gift certificate that somebody gave him at the university and said, like, here, take this gift certificate. There's a Chili's down there. We're like, okay, yeah, we'll go to Chili's. And I remember we went to Chili's for lunch, and we cried. We just sat there over nachos. We literally just cried of what we just heard, of what we could happen. Like, it wasn't even like, well, maybe it's not, or, let's look on the bright side. Like, there was no bright side to look at. It was
like, and anyone there who's a spouse or any, like, it was a life-changing thing. Yeah. Right? So for hearing that with that degree of certainty, it was like, shit.
I wish I had better news for you.
The poor waiter who was waiting on us in Chile.
It wasn't great.
We're sitting there, tears coming down. He's like, is the food that bad? I don't know.
Yeah, he just kind of ignored us. So, but at this time too, now we're in June, July, and we had to go to meet his MS doctor, and that was in actually downtown Philly. Right? So we basically met him, and it was like one thing after the other. As soon as we got done with that appointment, it was blood work, it was MRIs on the spinal tap down there. Yeah. We had, so I guess to see if you have MS, to diagnose you, you have to have 4 or 5 things that all, a blood work has to be a certain percentage, and this has to be everything. So and I remember sitting with Dr. Perone, and he was wonderful. And now in the meantime, by the way, we are getting our son ready for YAP, Micronesia.
Where's YAP?
So he literally was ready to go for a year. So we're mentally and preparing for that and raising money and doing everything with that. And now we're running back and forth to Philly and trying to have everything with his diagnosis, which hasn't 100% happened yet.
And also, here's a spousal comment. So the MS, the Micronesia of our son, and it was our 25th wedding anniversary that summer.
It was.
Happy anniversary, honey.
Yeah. So we actually saved for maybe 3 years because we wanted to go on a cruise, and we always let's save for our 25th. Well, guess what? We never took that cruise. But
COVID came and went.
So our 25th wedding anniversary, we'll never forget that. So, we dropped off Marino at the airport, and I remember having a conversation with him, and it was like, I had to be a little bit numb. I had to be numb to be okay, let's check things off the list. Let's do this. It was go time, basically. Yeah. And I remember having a conversation with the 3 of us, and we said, listen, nothing will will hinder you from going here.
Absolutely.
This is not something that you're not going to go because dad might be diagnosed with something. Like, this is not going to happen. You have to live your own life.
Yeah.
You have to be the one to go. And we mean that for all of our children. And, like, you're not going to stay around the house because, Dave might need help one
At
day.
all times,
like, that's not true. So he appreciated that. And he went to Yap. We dropped him off at Newark Airport. And the next day, we were in Philly getting the official diagnosis of primary progressive MS. So let's just say
that was a whirlwind.
It was a whirlwind. It was a summer that I'll never forget. It was definitely, it was something that was hard every single day, but it was almost like I had to be that numb person. I couldn't, believe me, I cried in the shower and I cried by myself a lot, but I couldn't. He wasn't stable enough because he was in the toilet. So he wasn't stable enough. And we could talk about that now.
1,000%.
That I couldn't share those feelings with. I thank God for certain friends that I have that I was able to, talk to about it. But it was definitely probably the hardest summer of our life.
That's the thing. I mean, honestly, it's so individually, right? Like having the condition, whatever, and then as a spouse, there's dark times, dark times. And Dina's 100% right in that, saying that I wasn't able to handle more negativity. I was literally in a black hole for a long time, that summer. So whatever anybody sees me or whatever, oh, you look good and whatever, stuff like that, you're doing good. That might be true from time to time, but there's darkness and blackness, right? So you as a spouse dealing with that on your side, there must have been challenges, right, that come about. So that's the shit that you talked about, and there's way more, I'm sure, and the challenges are there. Could you articulate more on the challenges?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge for you is your moods. Your mood swings are definitely, people don't see that. People don't see that. So many people are like, he looks great. Oh my God, Dave's the best. And everything like that. And I see the mood swings. I see the ones when he snaps at me for no reason or snaps at the kids or something like that. Also, gaslighting is a big thing. And I use those words, and I was like, okay, I'm going to look at the word. What does gaslighting mean?
For the non-tech informed, Dina, what is gaslighting?
It's a form of psychological manipulation where a person manipulates onto another, questioning their own reality, perception, sanity, or memory.
Okay.
Yes.
So my gaslighting, I'm not denying that I do it, but it's not purposeful.
Right.
I think it's just my messed up, effed up brain, but go ahead. Sorry.
So he'll say, "I told you that," or and he wouldn't. But I also got gaslit by other people, and that was kind of hard. So if I would ask, let's give an example, your bike ride, which was a shit show, and we're not getting into that, but your bike ride, and then if I try to say, oh, he's doing too much, or this, and people are like, oh, Dina, let him go. He's fine. Right. At least he could do it. And but that made me feel terrible because I'm the one then that puts up with his exhaustion later, his moods, his not being able to do anything else in the house, picking up pieces. So people out there who say that to me, it's really hard to hear and very hurtful because, they don't know, but what am I going to say that to them?
That's a massive challenge.
That's a massive challenge.
For a spouse dealing with something like this.
Because people all see you as Dave Angeloni and the smile on your face and, things like that. And just like a spouse, we see everything that's not that.
All the uglies,
the gaslit lighting from everybody all around, that was really, really hard. One time, you yelled around something, and I remember you laughed, and Enzo just came over and gave me a hug. Yeah. And I remember that meant so much to me. Or one time you said something, or I said something, and Dominic goes, "No, Mom, you were right with that." So just having that little bit of I'm not going nuts because at one point I feel like I'm losing my mind, and so that's definitely a challenge. Of course, not knowing what the future is, that's a huge challenge. And you're so freaking anal.
But I've been anal my whole life.
I think this exemplifies.
Maybe
It's just like a schedule. So here's an example of this podcast. So the podcast was, is definitely like, okay, we got to have the podcast. It has to go out Monday. And I'm like, okay, well, we're crazy busy with, Dina's Treats. I have a little Dina's Treats business with St. Ubaldo coming up. And I'm like, Dave, is like the podcast police going to come if it goes out Tuesday instead of Monday?
I think about our many thousands of loyal listeners nationwide who demand bi-weekly releases of these shows, Dina. That's what I'm thinking about.
So like
I'm laughing. Come on.
So the challenge is definitely like letting you go.
Yeah.
So like I'll be like doing stuff in the house or something with Dina's Treats, and he'll be like, okay, I'm going for a walk because like this is what I have to do. I have to go for a walk.
Right.
And a lot of times I'm like, damn, I want to go for a walk, but I can't go for a walk because like I'm doing other things. Letting you go, like he wanted snowshoes like for his birthday. I'm like, why do you want snowshoes?
And then it stopped snowing.
Like walk.
My birthday's in February.
So then he wants to go for a walk and it's ice and slushy out. And like, I'm like, and then finally I had to be like, I can't say no. I had to say in a way is like, do you think that's the smartest maybe decision you should make?
Yeah.
His bike, like he would go riding his bike and like he had a bike accident that knocked out his teeth.
Yeah.
So like it was definitely, and then guess who picks up those pieces?
Right.
So like
Right.
even though you're like, oh well, stop nagging him, let him do what he wants.
Right. No.
Nobody sees that I have to deal with the repercussions
That's
of it.
true.
So
And
that's definitely a challenge
And it's
of
a
how
lot.
that.
Yeah, the rigidity that I have and the routine and stuff like that, it could easily come off as selfish. And that's something I don't think I touched on much talking about MS and my shit and things like that. But selfishness is definitely something, and that has such a negative connotation, which it should, selfishness in general. But there's also, sometimes selfishness is helpful when you're dealing with something like MS from time to time, right? But we live in a social context. Right? I live with a family, you have a wife, you have kids, you have life in the world. So you can't always be selfish. Say, oh, I'm going to go for a walk now, and stuff like that. But I have done that. I have done that.
In the middle of like a holiday, we have a house full of people.
Yeah.
He'll just go upstairs and lay down, which like that's hard because Dave always like pulls his weight around the house and he'll do like the dishes or like he'll be like doing stuff, but like now he's too tired to do that. So that's just like a challenge that we all have to face. But I guess how do I cope?
Yeah, give me the cope. We're winding down here, and we didn't touch on the cope part yet. So yeah, Dina, give me some coping stuff.
All right. So to be honest, some days I don't cope. That is the God's honest truth. And somebody who say that they could cope every day, more power to them. Thank God I have the people in my life that I have that I could, talk with, that I don't know how anybody could keep this in and not talk to anybody about it because that's what would drive me crazy. So I have that with them. I pray a lot. It's really interesting because when he first got the diagnosis, I was listening to kind of what Dave listens to, Bible in the Year, Father Mike. And when he got diagnosed, I stopped. I stopped. And I still have had faith, and I still went to church and prayed and talked to God and received. I did all that stuff, but it wasn't the same until probably this past Lent. This past Lent, I feel like I got it back. And how many years ago is that? Like, I feel like I got it back. So I do pray a lot. Okay. I use podcasts to the Hallow app I use a lot, and that's really been helping me with just certain things in prayer. It's really hard for me to be alone in my thoughts.
So the stimulation through technology or conversation or whatever, stimulation takes you away from yourself and your own thoughts. So when you are with your own thoughts, that's challenging.
It's not great. And you know that like falling asleep, I need to be doing something until like I'm so tired and fall asleep, because when I'm alone and with my own thoughts, it's not great. And that's what I'm working on. But another podcast that I highly recommend is Let Them. It's by Mel Robbins. Good. It's a wonderful, wonderful podcast about let other people, like if they have to do it, like we have no control over them. So like even though he's my husband, no spouse or partner has a control over the other one. But it's like, let me, how am I going to respond to that? So that's definitely something that praying a lot. I listen to that podcast. Mel Robbins, she has a book and she has a podcast. I think she's wonderful. And I talk to people who are very close with me because good friends are so much. And, my cousins reach out to me. It's because everybody asks how Dave's doing.
Always,
and that's, of course you should. He's the one with MS.
Yeah. But then that's the question, right, that you need to ask the spouse. But how are you doing? 'Cause it's just a consideration.
And that just even, I'm like, no, I'm fine. I'm fine. Because I'm not the one with MS and everything. But I just want to speak to all the spouses out there, all the partners out there, all the loved ones out there that are, dealing with somebody, living with somebody with a chronic illness. It's not easy. And I hear you. And, if I could ever be an ear that you want to lean on, I'm not a pro.
Awesome.
I am so not a pro at any of this. But it's been... how many years now?
3 years.
Are we on
Almost
3 years?
three, yeah.
Almost 3 years.
3, yeah.
So it's it's not easy.
She's
and
been through some things.
Like I said, some days I don't cope, and guess what? That's okay.
That's okay.
That's okay. Some days I cry.
Yeah.
Some days I just, I've been getting better with a lot of stimulation downstairs, and you're being you and the kids are being them, and we have all of our adult kids home, and sometimes they're like,
that's another story.
Yeah, that's another podcast,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But it's like, you know what? I'm going upstairs.
Yeah.
I need 20 minutes, and sometimes I'll just lay on the bed, and sometimes I put a podcast on, sometimes I'll put music on, sometimes I don't put anything on, and I need that.
Self-care.
So,
Self-care. And I think that's I forget who said, selfish is another word for that, is self-care.
Yeah.
Like sometimes you're just caring for yourself in some personal way that maybe you need to at that moment, and that's okay. It's not necessarily selfish, it's self-care. So yeah, Dina, that is awesome. Awesome. I appreciate that. Your shit is evident. The challenges you face, your coping strategies, the faith you're bringing to it. I think that's a major coping thing for
I don't know what people would do without faith. I really don't.
Idea.
Yeah.
No idea, right?
Yeah.
And that's, as a spouse, like Dina and I share great faith with each other, but faith is a tricky thing, right?
Yeah.
It waxes and wanes. Mm-hmm. It comes and goes. There's different periods, different ways to do it.
I struggled in just giving everything over to God, and I think that once you do, I feel like that helps with the stress. Now, do I still have stress and anxiety? Absolutely, because nobody's perfect, but yeah.
Okay, all right. As our guest, and thank you again for joining us, and thank you everyone for listening to our latest episode here, but as our special guest today, of course, as is our custom, Dina gets to end the show with a close. Dina, what do you have for us? Final thoughts.
So my final thoughts are something that I say every single day, okay? And this is just, I pray for a miracle for Dave. I pray for a miracle that, he gets no MS or that he doesn't get any more symptoms. But what control do I have over that? So it's basically, Jesus, I trust in you. Let your will be done. And my most favorite saying is, Jesus, take the wheel.
Take the wheel. Take the wheel. I'm not in control here. You are.
Jesus, take the wheel.
That's perfect. So thank you, everyone, for spending time with us listening to We All Have Shit. Remember, even though we'll always have some kind of shit in our lives, the best we can do is stay positive, have faith, and help where we can. So until next time, onward.